The first time I killed a man in the ringstone, I was 19, and the pack lifted me on their shoulders and called me their champion, and I did not sleep for a year. The last time, I felt nothing at all. That is what the ring does if you live long enough inside it. It takes the thing in you that flinches and it files it down, bout by bout, winter by winter, until there is only the flat gray calm of a man who has stopped expecting to feel his own heartbeat. They called it strength in Dunville. They carved it into the black stones over the ring gate. The iron mark keeps no soft thing, and they meant it as a blessing. I stood in the center of the ringstone with the torchlight throwing my shadow long across the sand, and the man I had just beaten lay curled at my feet with his arm bent wrong, and the whole hold roared my name until the rafters shook. Garrick, 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 2,000 throats, and I could not have told you one of them from another. I looked down at the fallen challenger, a boy, really, some second son from a lowland pack who had come north believing the songs, and I felt the old gray nothing settle over me like snow. He would live. I had learned over the years exactly how much to give and exactly where to stop, the way a butcher knows a joint. It is a terrible skill. It let me be merciful, and it let me be a monster in the same breath, and the pack loved me for both without ever seeing the difference. Osric came to me at the ring's edge, the old warmaster, iron-gray and iron-hearted, the man who had made me. He put the champion's collar back around my throat with his own scarred hands, a band of black iron, cold as the grave, that I had worn since I was a boy. "Clean wind," he said. "You held the crowd." "I held the crowd," I agreed. He studied my face the way he always did, looking for the crack he was sure would come one day. "You're getting quiet, Garrick." "I've always been quiet." "Quieter." He watched them drag the lowland boy toward the ring gate, toward the dark mouth of the tunnel that led down to the losers' tents. A champion who goes too quiet stops wanting to win, and a champion who stops wanting to win dies in the ring. I finished it for him. It was the oldest law of the iron mark, older than my collar, older than the black stones. The champion keeps no heart. A man who loves has something to lose, and a man with something to lose fights to keep it and dies with it in his hands. I had heard it 1,000 times. I believed it the way you believe in cold, not as a choice, but as a fact of the world I had been born into. "Go rest," Osric said. "You've the northern challenger in 3 days. He's bigger than the boy." They were always bigger than the last one. That was the shape of a champion's life. An unbroken line of larger men walking out of the dark to try to end you, until one of them did. I had made my peace with that ending years ago. I thought, honestly, that I was ready for it. I thought there was nothing left in me for the ring to take. I was wrong, but I would not learn how wrong for 3 more days. I went to wash the sand off in the cold trough behind the champion's quarters, and I was pulling my shirt back over the ruin of my shoulders. A champion's body is a map of every winter he has survived, and mine ached in the cold the way old wood aches, a low, constant complaint I had stopped hearing years ago. When my second, a lean, quick man named Corin, came to find me with a strange look on his face. "There's talk in the tents," he said. "There's always talk in the tents." "Not like this," he glanced over his shoulder toward the tunnel mouth. "The lowland boy. The one you put down tonight. His arm was broke bad, Garrick, I saw it, bent like a green branch." "I know I broke it." "By dawn he'll walk out of here using it." Corin said it flat, like a man reporting something he did not believe himself. "There's a woman down in the losers' tents, been there most of a year now. She takes the ones the ring throws away, the beaten ones, the ones we're done with, the ones that ought to die of it, and she sends them home whole. And that's not the strange part." I waited. "The blood-mad ones," Corin said, and lowered his voice further, because that was a thing men did not speak of lightly in Dunville. "You know how it goes with a challenger sometimes, when the fight fury takes him too deep, and his wolf won't come back down. How they rage in the dark after, and we chain them, and mostly they burn it out or they don't. She goes into them, alone, lays hands on them, and they quiet, Garrick, just quiet, like a candle pinched out." I had gone very still, not the ring stillness, the flat gray calm, something else, something in the base of my spine, an old instinct with no name. Because a wolf in the blood madness is not a thing you touch. It is not a thing you approach. I had seen strong men, handlers, warmasters, wolves twice the size of any healer, go into the dark to a blood-mad challenger and come out carried, or not come out at all. The fury does not know friend from meat. It is the one thing in all the iron mark that even I stepped wide around. And there was a woman in the losers' tents who walked into it, and laid her bare hands on it and put it to sleep. "What's her name?" I asked. "Maeve," Corin said. "Just Maeve, keeps to herself, asks nothing of anyone. The beaten men would die for her, half of them, but she won't take so much as a coin." He hesitated. "Osric doesn't know about the blood-mad ones. She hides it. And Garrick, she'd be right too. You know what they'd do with a healer who can hand quiet the fury." I knew, God's help me, I knew exactly. A healer like that would never see the open sky again. They would chain her to the ringstone the way they had chained me, and they would use her the way they used me, to keep the meat alive between bouts, to wring more fights out of broken men, to make the killing last longer. A gift like that in a place like Dunville was not a blessing. It was a sentence. "Say nothing," I told Corin, "to anyone, especially Osric." "I've said nothing for a year." "Then say nothing for a year more." I pulled my cloak around me. "I'll see her myself." Garrick, he caught my arm, which no man in Dunville did, and let it go at once when he saw my face. "If you go down there and Osric hears the champion's been in the losers' tents, he'll want to know why, and if he starts asking why, he'll find her." "Then I'll go where no one sees me," I said, "tonight, when the torches are low." I told myself I went to be sure, to see with my own eyes whether the story was true, because a gift like that changes what a war master can do with a pack, and I did not want Osric holding a thing like that without my knowing. I told myself it was strategy. I have never been a good liar, least of all to myself. But it took me a long time to learn that about myself, and that night I still believed the lie all the way down the dark tunnel to the tents. The losers' tent sat below the ringstone, in the cold hollow where the wind came down off the mountain and pooled. It was the part of Dunville no one looked at. When you win, they carry you up into the light and the roar. When you lose, they carry you down here into the dark to mend or to die, and the hold above forgets you exist by morning. I had been champion 11 years. I had never once come down here. That is the truth, and it shames me to write it. I came cloaked and hooded, my collar hidden, and I stood at the edge of the lantern light, and I watched her before she knew I was there. She was not what the stories had built in my mind. I had expected, I do not know, something fierce to match the fierceness of what she did. A hard woman, a witch woman, someone with the mountain in her eyes. She was small and she was tired, and she was kneeling in the straw beside the lowland boy I had broken that night, winding a clean strip of linen around his arm with hands that moved sure and slow and gentle, and she was humming, just under her breath. Some low tune with no words, the kind a woman hums to a child, or to herself when she has been alone a long while. The boy's face, which had been gray with pain in the ring, was slack and easy in sleep. "You can come in," she said without looking up. "The cold gets in when you stand in the flap like that." I did not move. "You know I'm here." "I've known since you came down the tunnel. You walk like a fighter. They all put their weight down the same way, like they're expecting the floor to hit back." She tied off the linen and smoothed it with her thumb, and only then did she look up at me, and her eyes in the lantern light were the gray-green of moss on a north stone, and they were not afraid. That was the thing that undid me first, before anything else. Every soul in Dunville looked at me with fear or with hunger. She looked at me the way she'd looked at the boy's broken arm, like a thing that was hurt, and might be mended if it would only sit still. "You're the champion," she said. "I'm cloaked." "You're the champion," she said again, patient, "because there's a man's shape under that cloak that no lowland loser ever had, and because the whole tunnel went quiet ahead of you, which it only does for one man in this hold. Sit down, Garrick. You're letting the cold in." No one had said my name like that in 11 years. Not champion, not the iron mark, not a roar, just my name, plain, the way you'd say the name of a man you meant to know. I sat down on the low bench by the brazier because my legs did it before I told them to. "They say you heal the ones we throw away," I said. "Someone has to." "Why?" She looked at me a long moment. "Because they're hurt," she said, as if I had asked why water was wet. "And because no one else will. Your hold has 100 hands for putting men in the ground and none at all for pulling them back out of it." There was no accusation in it. That was almost worse. She said it the way you'd note that a roof leaked. "They say you do more than heal," I said. "They say you go to the blood-mad ones." Her hands stilled. It was the first time I had seen her wary, and I hated that I had put it there. "Who says that?" "No one who'll say it to Osric. You have my word." And then, because her word deserved mine and I found I wanted to give it, "I came alone. No one sent me. No one knows I'm here. If you tell me it's a lie, I'll carry it out of this tent, and never come back, and no one will ever know I asked. She searched my face for the lie in it, and did not find one because there wasn't one. Slowly her hands went back to their work, gathering the soiled linen, and she was quiet for long enough that I thought she'd decided to lie to me after all, and I found I was braced against it like a blow. "Come," she said instead, and rose and took up a small lantern. "You wanted to see, come and see. But you'll be quiet, and you'll stay behind me, and you'll do exactly as I say, or you'll get us both killed." At the far end of the tents, past the sleeping wounded, there was a heavy hide curtain, and behind it a pit dug into the cold stone floor, and in the pit, chained, was a thing that had that morning been a man. I knew him. He was the Northern Challenger's forerunner, a big brutal wolf from an eastern pack who had lost about 2 nights gone and gone too deep into the fury to come back. They'd chained him down here to burn it out or die of it, and everyone in Dunville had already forgotten him, because that is what we do. In the lantern light, his eyes were flat red and wrong. No man left in them at all, only the madness. And when he saw me, he lunged against the chains with a sound that raised every hair on my body. A wet, tearing snarl that was not a wolf and not a man and had no bottom to it. I had my hand on my knife before I knew it. Every instinct I owned screamed to put myself between that thing and the small woman beside me. "Don't," Maeve said softly. "He can smell the ring on you. You're everything he's still fighting. Stay back and be still and let me work." And then, before I could stop her, before I could do a single thing, she stepped down into the pit with the blood-mad wolf. I have stood in the ringstone against men who wanted to kill me and felt nothing. I stood at the edge of that pit and felt my heart come up into my throat like a fist. She did not rush him. She knelt at the edge of his reach, just at the edge, a hand's breadth from where the chains would let him tear her open, and she began, low and steady, to hum that same wordless tune. And she held out her hands, palms up, open, empty, and in the lantern light I saw for the first time the faint silver tracery across her palms, like frost ferns, like the pattern moonlight makes through bare branches. And I saw that where she held them toward the wolf's wounds the silver warmed and glowed. The blood-mad wolf snarled and lunged and hit the end of his chain and fell back, and she did not flinch, and she kept humming, and she kept her open hands out into the dark toward him, patient as the mountain, and the terrible sound he made began slowly to change, to gutter, to lower. The red went out of his eyes by degrees the way a coal dies. His great head began to sink. And at last, I will not forget it if I live 300 years. The thing that had been a killing madness laid its heavy skull down into her open, silver-lit hands and shuddered and wept, the way a beaten dog weeps, and was only a hurt and exhausted man again. She stroked the fur between his eyes and hummed until his breathing went slow and even, and he slept, and then she climbed out of the pit as calmly as a woman climbing out of a root cellar, and she was shaking just slightly, in a way I do not think she knew I could see. "That's the truth of it," she said quietly. "Now you've seen, and now you understand why no one can ever know." "How?" It was all I could say. "How do you?" "I don't know how." She wiped her silver-marked palms on her apron as if she could wipe the gift off. "I've had it since I was a girl. My mother had it and hers. It's the still hand. There's a story that it's moon-given, a mercy laid in a bloodline to answer for all the blood men spill under her. I don't know if that's true. I only know that I can walk into the fury and it doesn't take me, and I can put it to sleep, and I have never once been able to make myself walk away from a hurt thing and leave it hurting." She looked at me, and there was something almost like an apology in it, as if the gift were a fault. "It's not a blessing in a place like this. You know that better than anyone wearing that collar." "They'd chain you to the ring," I said. "They'd chain me to the ring." She said it without drama, a thing long since accepted. "So you'll forgive me if I ask the champion of the Ironmark very plainly to forget he was ever down here." And I meant to say yes. I had come intending at most to know the truth and keep it. That was the whole of my plan. But I had been standing near her for an hour, in the warmth of the brazier and the low light, and somewhere in that hour a thing had happened to me that I did not have words for and did not notice until I turned to go. My body did not hurt. The old ache, the low, constant complaint of 11 winters of the ring, the grinding in my shoulders, the deep bone cold in my hands, the pain I had stopped hearing the way you stop hearing a river you live beside was gone. It had gone so quietly that I only felt it by its absence, the way you feel a room go silent. For the first time in more years than I could count, my whole scarred body was still and easy and did not hurt, and I stood in the tent flap and did not want to step through it back into the cold, because I knew the way you know weather, that the ache was waiting for me on the other side of her. "Garrick," she said. "I'll forget I was here," I said, which was the second lie I told myself that night, and the last one I would ever manage to believe. I did not forget. I could not have forgotten if I'd tried. I walked back up the dark tunnel to the light and the roar and the cold champion's quarters, and with every step away from her, the ache came back into my bones, wound by wound, until by the time I reached my own bed, I hurt the way I had always hurt, the way I had thought was simply the price of being what I was, and now I knew it was not the price of anything. It was just pain, and there was one place in all the world where it stopped. I lay awake until dawn, a man who had felt nothing for 11 years, feeling all at once far too much. I went back the next night, and the night after. I told myself again that it was strategy, that I was keeping her secret by keeping her watched, that a champion had a right to know his hold. I have already confessed what a poor liar I am. The truth was simpler, and I was a coward about it for exactly 2 nights. I went back because down there, in the lantern light and the low hum and the warmth of her, I did not hurt, and I had not known until her that I ever could not hurt, and now that I knew, the wanting of it was a thing I could not put down. But it was not only the ache. If it had only been the ache, I might have been ashamed of myself and stayed away. It was her. I had spent my life among fighters, among men who measured everything in strength and fear, and here was this small, tired woman who had less power in her whole frame than I had in one arm, and who was braver than any of us. She walked into the fury, and it did not touch her. She knelt in the straw with men the whole world had thrown away, and she called them by their names, and asked after their mothers, and sent them home mended. And she did it in the dark where no song would ever be sung about it, and she asked for nothing, and she would have gone on doing it in secret until it killed her or the mountain took her, and no one in Dunville would ever have known that the gentlest soul in the hold had been living under the killing floor the whole time. The second night I mended kindling for her brazier without being asked, because my hands are good for breaking things, and I wanted once to make one of them good for something else. The third night she let me carry water. The fourth night she looked up from a man's split brow and said, "You could just say it, you know. Whatever it is you come down here to not say, it's costing you more to hold it than it would to set it down." "I don't hurt," I said, "when I'm near you." She went still. "My whole life I've hurt," I said. The words came out of me in a rush now that the seal was broken, low and fast, a thing I had never said to a living soul. "Every winter of the ring is still in my body. It aches all the time. I stopped feeling it years ago the way you stopped feeling your own name. And the first night I came down here it stopped, just stopped. And the moment I walk back up that tunnel it starts again. It's you, Maeve, it's being near you, I don't know what it means. But I know it's real, and I know it's never happened with another living soul, and I know." I stopped. I made myself say the last of it. "I know it's the thing the old law is talking about, the bond, the one they carved over the ring gate to warn us away from, the champion keeps no heart." She had gone very pale. "Garrick, they say a champion who feels this dies in the ring," I said. "That love makes a man have something to lose, and a man with something to lose fights to keep it and dies with it in his hands. I believed that my whole life. I believed it the way I believe in the cold." I looked at her. "And I stood in this tent 4 nights ago and watched you lay your bare hands on the blood madness and put it to sleep. And I have not been able to make myself believe one true thing since, except that I do not want to die numb, and I do not want to live numb. And the only place I have ever not been numb is 3 feet from where you're standing." For a long moment she did not speak. The brazier ticked. Somewhere in the tents, a mended man turned in his sleep. "There's a reason my hands quiet the fury," she said at last, very quietly, "that I've never told anyone. Because the 2 things are the same thing, Garrick. The still hand and this, what you're feeling, it's the same gift wearing 2 faces. My blood answers the blood madness because my blood is made to answer you, all of you. The whole terrible ring of you." Her silver-marked hands trembled at her sides. "I have spent a year telling myself I came to Dunville for the wounded, and that's true, but I think I have wondered this year whether I came for you and only told myself it was them, because wanting the champion of the Ironmark is the kind of wanting that gets a woman like me chained to a wall." She laughed, and it broke a little. "So, there it is. Now we've both set it down." I crossed the tent, and I took her small, silver-lit hands in my 2 broken ones, and the ache went out of me all the way to the roots, and I felt her feel it. felt the shudder go through her as the years of pain drained out of me and into that impossible stillness. And neither of us said anything for a while, because there was nothing that needed saying. "The law," she whispered finally against my chest. "Garrick, if this is real, then by your own law you'll die in the ring. You have the Northern Challenger in." 2 days, I said. 2 days, her hands tightened on mine. "You can't lose your edge 2 days before a bout that'll kill you if you're soft. I won't be the thing that kills you. I won't. I would rather you walked back up that tunnel right now and never came down again and lived than—" "Listen to me," I said, and I lifted her chin so she'd see my face. "I have won every bout for 11 years, and I have felt nothing, and I have been ready to die in the ring since I was a boy because there was nothing on the other side of it worth living for. That's not an edge, Maeve. That's a dead man they haven't buried yet. The law's got it backwards." I understood it even as I said it, the whole shape of it coming clear the way ice clears. A champion with nothing to lose doesn't fight to win. He fights to end. I've been fighting to end for 11 years and calling it strength. You didn't give me something to lose. You gave me the first reason I've had to want to live. And a man who wants to live. The hide curtain at the tent's mouth was wrenched aside. Osric stood in the gap with 2 of his war masters behind him and the torchlight hard on his iron-gray face, and his eyes went from me to her to our joined hands, to the silver frost fern light glowing on her palms where they pressed against mine, and I watched him understand all of it at once. The healer, the gift, the champion in the loser's tents 4 nights running, the bond. "Well," Osric said softly, and there was grief in it, real grief, which was somehow the worst thing of all. "So it's true, all of it." He looked at Maeve's glowing hands the way a starving man looks at bread. "A hand that quiets the fury. Do you know what that's worth, girl? Do you know how many more bouts I can wring out of a wolf you keep from burning out?" And then, to me, and the grief in his voice went cold. "And you, the champion gone soft in the tents 2 nights before the North comes for him. You know the law, Garrick. I taught it to you myself. A champion who takes a heart dies in the ring." "Then it's fortunate," said a new voice from the dark behind him, cold and pleased, "that I've come to make sure of it." The challenger stepped into the light, not the northern one. Drace, a lean, scarred, hungry wolf from our own pack who had been snapping at my heels for 2 years, waiting for a weakness. He'd followed Osric down, and now he was smiling because he had found the weakness at last, and her name was Maeve. "I invoke the death match," Drace said, and the words fell into the tent like stones down a well. "Champion against challenger to the death by the oldest law of the Ringstone, tomorrow at high torch." His smile widened. "And when I've killed you, Garrick, I'll take the collar. And I'll take the pretty little still hand, too, and chain her to the ring where a gift like that belongs. So, fight soft, fight hard, it's all the same to me now. You've already lost the only thing you had to lose." They would not let me near her again before the bout. Osric saw to that. He had Maeve moved under guard for her safety, which meant for his keeping, and he had me returned to the champion's quarters with 2 war masters at the door, and the whole hold woke to the news that at high torch the champion would fight the challenger to the death, as it had not fought in a generation, and Dunville bayed for it. A death match. They had not had one since before I was crowned. The oldest and hungriest thing the Ringstone did, and it was mine. I did not sleep. I sat in the cold, and I let the old ache come back into every bone because she was far from me now, and I made myself feel all of it, every winter, every wound, the whole gray weight of the life I had lived. And somewhere in the long dark, I stopped thinking about how to win the bout, and started thinking about the boy I had been at 19, lifted on the pack's shoulders, sick with what he had done. And the boy after him, and the one after him, all the sons of all the packs who had walked out of the dark to die on my hands so that Dunville could roar. And the men in the losers' tents below, thrown away in the cold, that no one in the hold above would cross a room to help. And a small, tired woman with frost-fern hands who had crossed the whole world to help them, and asked nothing, and hidden it, because the iron mark had no use for mercy except to chain it. I understood in the cold before dawn that the law was not wrong about me. It was right. A champion who took a heart would die in the ring, but not the way Osric meant, not because love made me weak, because love at last made me see the ring for what it was, a stone throat that ate the sons of the North one at a time and called it strength. And once you have truly seen a thing like that, you cannot walk back into it and be its blade. You cannot. There is a kind of seeing you do not survive as the man you were. So I decided in the dark that the champion of the Iron Mark would die in the ring at high torch, exactly as the law foretold. I only meant to choose how. They brought me up through the tunnel into the light and the roar, and the ringstone was full to the rafters. every soul in Dunville packed in around the black stones, and the noise of them was a physical thing, a wall of sound. Drace was already in the center, stripped for the bout, turning slowly with his arms spread to drink the crowd. Osric stood at the ring's edge in the War Master's place, and beside him, held between two guards, small and pale and straining toward me, was Maeve. He had brought her up to watch. To keep her in his hand, and to keep me sharp. Nothing whets a fighting man, he believed, like something to lose at the ring's edge. He did not understand what he had done. He had put the one reason I had to live in plain sight of every wolf in the hold, and he thought it would make me fight. I walked to the center of the sand. Drace grinned at me all teeth. "Soft," he said, just for me under the roar. "I can smell it on you, this'll be quick." I looked at him. He was younger than me and hungrier, and he had come up the same road I had, the road that files a man down to nothing, and in 10 years he would be exactly what I was, hollow and gray and waiting to die if the ring didn't eat him first. He was not my enemy. He was just the next man the ringstone had made in its own image. I had been him. I had put down a dozen of him. And then I did the thing that no champion of the Ironmark had done in the whole history of the Black Stones. I reached up, and I unlocked the champion's collar from my own throat, and I threw it down into the sand at Drace's feet. The roar guttered. 2,000 throats fell all at once into a silence so total I could hear the torches breathe. "I won't fight you," I said. I did not shout it, but the silence carried it to every stone. "I won't kill you, Drace. I've killed enough Sons of the North for this ring to eat. I'm done." I turned slowly, so they could all see my face, all of them, the whole hold that had roared my name for 11 years and never once come down into the cold to see what the roaring cost. "This ring has eaten our sons for 100 years, and we've called it strength. I called it strength. I was wrong. It's not strength. It's just death dressed up in torchlight, and I won't be its blade for one more day." "Garrick," Osric's voice cracked across the ring like a whip. "The law is the death match. You've been challenged. If you will not fight, you forfeit your life. There's no third road. Take up your collar or take up your knife." "I know the law," I said, and I turned back to Drace, and I spread my empty hands, and I went down to my knees in the sand, and I bared my throat to him. "There's your third road, War Master. A champion who takes a heart dies in the ring. Well, here I am, and here's my heart, and here's the ring. The law's satisfied. Let it be satisfied with me, and only me, and let it be the last time it's ever fed." The silence was terrible. Drace stood over me with the killing fury already rising in him, called up by the crowd and the blood smell and the old savage law, and I watched the red come into his eyes, watched the man in them start to drown, because that is what the ring does. It does not let a challenger stop once he's this far in. He raised his hand. His wolf was surfacing, huge and blood-mad, past choosing, past mercy. He would not be able to stop himself. That was the ring's final cruelty. It did not even leave the killer a choice. I did not close my eyes. I looked past Drace to the ring's edge to Maeve. I wanted her face to be the last thing. And Maeve tore free of the guards. She was small, and they were War Masters, and it should not have been possible, but there is a strength in the still hand that is not the strength of the arm, and she went through them like water goes through a fist, and she was over the black stones and into the ring before Osric could take a breath to stop her, and she threw herself down into the sand between me and the killing blow, not to shield me with her body, though she did that too, but to reach up, both her frost-fern hands open and glowing silver-bright, and lay them flat against the chest of the blood-mad thing that Drace had become. And she began to hum. I will tell you what 2,000 wolves of the Ironmark saw at high torch that day, packed silent around the black stones, and what they have not stopped telling since. They saw the smallest, gentlest soul in all of Dunville kneel unarmed in the killing ring and lay her bare hands on the deepest blood madness any of them had ever witnessed, a fully risen challenger, past the point of no return, a thing that should have torn her apart before she drew breath, and they saw the silver light bloom out from her palms across his chest like frost spreading on a window, and they heard, under the held silence of the whole hold, one small woman humming a wordless tune with no bottom of fear in it at all, and they saw the red go out of Drace's eyes the way a coal dies. They saw the killing fury gutter and lower and break. They saw the man come back up into his own face, shaking, appalled, staring down at his own raised hand. And they saw him fall to his knees in the sand across from me and weep like a boy, with her silver-lit hands still open over his heart, holding the peace into him until he could hold it himself. No one died in the ringstone that day. For the first time in its 100 years, the ring was fed nothing, and it did not fall down, and the mountain did not crack, and the sky did not darken. The old law had promised death, and instead there was only a shaking man kneeling in the sand, and a woman between us with the moon in her hands, and a hold full of wolves who had come to watch a killing and had watched a mercy instead, and did not, in the silence, seem to know what to do with themselves. I have thought many times since about the true shape of what she did. The law said a champion who loved would fight to keep what he had and die with it in his hands. It never once imagined that the thing he loved might walk into the ring herself and put out her open hands and end the killing without a single death, that mercy might be stronger than the blade, and that the one gift the whole hold had wanted to chain to the ring to make the dying last longer would instead be the thing that made the dying stop. She did not sacrifice herself to save me. She did the far braver and far stranger thing. She walked into the fury one more time in front of the whole world and quieted it, and by quieting it she quieted the ring itself forever. Osric came down into the sand, slowly, an old man moving like an old man. He looked at Drace, kneeling and whole and wretched, who should by every law he'd ever taught be standing over a corpse. He looked at Maeve, and at the silver light fading from her palms as she gentled it, and I saw the hunger go out of his face, and something older and more tired come up under it. And then he did a thing I never thought to see. He unbuckled the War Master's iron from his own arm, the black band he had worn longer than I'd been alive, the mark of the man who kept the law of the ring, and he let it fall into the sand beside my discarded collar. 100 years, he said to no one, to all of us. 100 years I've fed this ring our sons and called it the Iron Mark's strength. He looked at me, and his iron eyes were wet, which I had not known they could be. I taught you that law, Garrick. I taught it to you when you were a boy who couldn't sleep for a year over the first man he put down. I filed that boy down to nothing with my own hands and called it making a champion. His voice broke. Forgive an old fool who mistook the killing of the softness for strength. I see the strength now. It's kneeling in the sand with the moon in its hands, and it never once needed the ring at all. We ended the ringstone that season. It was not a simple thing, nor a quick one. 100 years of a hold's whole shape do not come down in a day, and there were wolves who fought it, and lowland packs who did not understand, and long, hard councils in the cold. But the thing about a hold that has watched its own oldest cruelty broken by mercy, in the open, in front of every eye, it cannot unsee it. The black stones came down stone by stone over that first year, and I hauled more of them with my own hands than any wolf in Dunville, and it was the first work my breaking hands had ever done that I was not ashamed of. Where the ring had been, we built the tents up out of the cold hollow and into the light, a proper hall of mending, warm and open, with 100 hands for pulling men back out of the ground and none at all now for putting them in it. Maeve is the heart of it. Wolves come from packs a month's ride distant now, not to fight, but to be healed of the fights they've already had, and to bring their blood-mad ones, the ones the old world would have chained in the dark to burn out or die, to the one place under the mountains where a still hand will meet the fury with open palms and hum it home. She has taken students. 2 of them have the frostfern light faint in their own palms. The gift, it seems, can be learned a little, where it is honored instead of chained. Drace is the master of the Mending Hall's east wing. He is gentle with the blood-mad ones in a way that only a man who has been that lost can be. He does not speak of the day in the ring often, but I have seen him, more than once, sit all night beside a raging wolf just at the edge of its reach, humming the tune Maeve taught him, holding the piece into it the way she once held it into him. I put a dozen men like him in the ground before I learned better. I am glad past speaking that I did not put him there too. Osric lived 2 more winters, War Master of nothing, and spent both of them teaching the packs young the histories. Not the histories of the champions and their kills, which no one keeps now, but the older, quieter histories, the ones about how a pack tends its own. He died in his bed in the spring, which is not how the Iron Mark's War Masters were supposed to die. It is, I think, how they should have died all along. As for me, I threw down the champion's collar in the sand, and I never took it up again, and there is no champion of the Iron Mark now, and there is no one to be won because there is no ring, and I have never for one day missed the thing I was. My body still carries every winter of it. My shoulders still ache in the cold, and my hands, and the deep places the ring wore down. But I do not hurt in the old gray, constant way, because I am never far from her, and near her the ache goes quiet the way it did that first night in the lantern light, and I have decided that this is the truest thing I know about the world. That the pain a man carries can be answered if he finds the one soul his blood was made to answer to, and if he is brave enough to walk into the light where she is instead of staying in the dark that made him. I asked her when the last of the black stones was down and the sand was raked over and grass had begun, absurdly, to grow where 100 years of blood had soaked. I brought her out to the emptied place at dusk, and I went down on one knee in the new grass the way I had once gone down in the killing sand, except that this time it was not to bare my throat, but to offer her a thing. I have to ask you plainly, I said, because you were nearly chained for this gift, and I will not have you ever again give a single thing to a soul who didn't ask you fair. So I'm asking, not the champion, there's no champion. Just Garrick, who hurt his whole life and stopped hurting the night he met you, and who wants, if you'll have him, every day he has left, near enough to your frost-fern hands that the ache stays gone. I found I could barely say it. You told me once you wondered if you came to Dunville for me and only called it the wounded. I've wondered something too. I've wondered whether the still hand isn't the moon's mercy at all, but only her way of making sure that the gentlest thing in the world would walk, one day, into the hardest place in it, and put it down. And if that's so, then I think the hardest place in the world was me, Maeve, and you put me down. And I'm asking you to stay. She looked at me a long moment, with the dusklight in her moss-gray eyes and the first stars coming out over the mountain where the ring's roar used to be. And she took my 2 broken hands in her 2 glowing ones, and the ache went out of me all the way to the roots. Ask me the real question, Garrick, she said softly, and she was smiling and there were tears standing in it. Not whether I'll stay, I've been staying for 2 years. So I asked her the real question, plainly, in the grass where the killing used to be. And she said yes. Freely I made sure of it, made sure she knew there was no collar in it and no law and no chain, only the asking and her own free answer. And she said it again, just my name and the yes, the way she'd said my name that first night in the tents, plain, like the name of a man she meant to keep. I had stood in the center of the ring 1,000 times with 2,000 throats roaring my name, and felt nothing. I knelt in the new grass with one voice saying it soft, and felt everything, and was, at last, and for the rest of my life, no one's champion and no one's blade and no one's gray numb dead man walking, only a mended thing in the hands that mended it and hers.